Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this December 22nd, 2014 edition of Nightcast. Our opening story tonight, we go to France again, where they've been having all those crazy driver crashes. Police evacuated the Christmas market to inspect a van that has been driven at shoppers at a French Christmas market in the city of Nantes. Nantes. I forgot my French on that. Nantes. And the driver is reported, this vehicle is reported to have stabbed himself, officials say. 10 people are reported to have been injured, 5 seriously. The exact circumstances remain unclear, but the incident comes only a day after pedestrians were run down in Dijon, France. The driver of that vehicle had screamed, "God is great," in Arabic. On Saturday, a man using the same phrase was shot dead by police after attacking the police. Earlier today, French President François Hollande called for vigilance after Saturday and Sunday's attacks and urged the public not to panic. Now, I have an analysis on this by BBC News Paris European editor Hugh Schofield. He writes, "The French authorities are reluctant to say anything to encourage the idea that there is any kind of pattern behind the 3 attacks." Here's a photograph that goes with Hugh Schofield's story. For the first incident at the police station in Tours, it is clear that there was a religious motivation. The man left evidence of his conversion to extremist Islamic views. In Dijon, the man who drove into pedestrians also shouted, "God is great," in Arabic. But he is known to have had a history of mental illness. This was not terrorism, Hugh Schofield says. This was not terrorism is the official line. Similarly, in Nantes today, there is a strict embargo on speculation about the motives for the attack, all of which is perfectly understandable, Hugh Schofield says, but many people will be asking themselves if there's not some copycat effect being played out. Also, even if it's established that the car attacks were the work of unbalanced individuals, might not Islamist propaganda have played some role in pushing them to act? And that's the end of Hugh Schofield's analysis on this story. I have more from this story from BBC News, which says Monday's van attack in the western French city took place at about 1900 local time. That'd be about 7 p.m. in the evening, 1800 Greenwich Mean Time. According to initial reports, the van drove towards a stall selling hot wine. One of the traders at the market told local newspaper the white van was speeding toward the customers and onlookers. And I have a map I can bring forward for us, friends, showing France, showing on the east side, Dijon, France, where we had the car incident yesterday. Then on the west side of France, the left side of your photograph, there's Nantes, where this incident happened today, and then you can see Tours, where the police station incident occurred, and just to the north of that, just as a landmark, there's Paris, France. After the vehicle today came to a halt, the driver stabbed himself several times, causing serious injuries. A source close to the investigation told AFP news agency. The reasons for the attack were not clear. The sources said, adding, as things stand, we have no account pointing to any religious demands. The Christmas market was evacuated and cordoned off by police. A bomb disposal unit was brought in to inspect the van. Yesterday, a driver screaming "God is great" in Arabic ran down pedestrians in Dijon, injuring 11, 2 seriously. The man was arrested after targeting pedestrians in 5 different parts of the city in the space of a half an hour. The prosecutor in Dijon said the attacker had a long history of mental illness and the incident was not linked to terrorism. In Saturday's incident, a man stabbed 3 police officers in the city of Tours. Let me bring the map forward for you again a moment. That was Saturday's incident, where the man in Tours stabbed 3 police officers before being shot dead. Anti-terrorism investigators have opened an inquiry into that attack. That attack was in Tours. Yesterday's attack was in Dijon. Today's attack on the west side of France, Nantes, Nantes. And friends, we go now to Israel for a rather explosive story. Israel launches airstrike on Hamas target. Now, this story is datelined Saturday, 2 days ago, December 20. Israel says Hamas was responsible for the rocket attack on Friday. That's the caption that goes with this lead photograph for this story. Israel says Hamas was responsible for the rocket attack on Friday. Israeli aircraft have bombed a site in Gaza in the first such action since the declaration of a truce in August. The airstrike was carried out on a Hamas facility in response to a rocket fired earlier from Gaza, a statement from the Israeli military said. Residents of the Khan Yunis area in Gaza reported hearing 2 explosions, the Associated Press news agency said. The August truce ended 7 weeks of fighting that killed more than 2,200 people, most of them Palestinians. An IDF spokesman said the aircraft on Saturday targeted Hamas terror infrastructure. Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner said the strike was in response to a rocket that landed in Eshkol, southern Israel, on Friday. The rocket struck an open field and did not cause any casualties or damage. And, friends, here's a map that goes along with this story. There were no casualties in Gaza, according to local officials. Hamas fired thousands of rockets and mortars toward Israel during the 50-day conflict this summer. Israel carried out an aerial bombing campaign and a ground invasion. More than 70 Israelis were killed in the fighting, most of them soldiers. And as you probably know, friends, from the reporting during that 50-day incident during the summer, that was the largest number of casualties Israel has suffered during any of its past engagements in the past decade. Now, there's another story friends, from Saturday that relates to Israel. The UN asked Israel to pay Lebanon $850 million over an oil spill. Now, here's the caption that goes with the first photograph for this story. The bombing of the power plant released more than 100,000 barrels of oil into the sea. The UN General Assembly has passed a resolution asking Israel to pay Lebanon more than $850 million. That'd be the equivalent of 544 million British pounds sterling for a major oil spill during Israel's 2006 war with Hezbollah. The UN has asked Israel to compensate Lebanon. They've asked them to do that before, but this is the first time a figure has been given. The Assembly of the UN voted overwhelmingly in favor by 176 votes to 6. But its resolutions are not legally binding. Israel's UN mission said the resolution was biased. The slick was created when Israeli jets bombed a power station, releasing about 15,000 tons of oil into the eastern Mediterranean Sea. At its peak, it stretched for 120 kilometers, 75 miles along the shore. The resolution calls the incident, quote, an environmental disaster which caused extensive pollution. The Lebanese ambassador to the UN, Nawaf Salam, said the resolution was major progress. And the caption with this next video, friends, reads, the resolution called the oil spill an environmental disaster. But Israel's UN mission attacked the move, saying the country had already responded, Israel had already responded to the slick by working with the UN and other organizations. This resolution has long outlived the effects of the oil slick and serves no purpose other than to contribute to institutionalizing an anti-Israel agenda at the UN, a statement quoted by AP said. The 2006 conflict began when the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah launched a raid into Israel and captured 2 Israeli soldiers. Israel launched massive air and sea attacks on targets all over Lebanon, then invaded the south of the country. More than 1,000 Lebanese, mostly civilians, and about 160 Israelis, mostly soldiers, died. Okay, so let's see. Actually, we should have said earlier the 70 soldiers that died in this thing were the largest number in the more recent battles. They had 160 soldiers lost in that Lebanese engagement. Friends, our last story of the night relates to the first seal of Revelation, the white horse. Pope Francis sharply criticizes Vatican bureaucracy. This is from today's news. The caption with this opening photograph reads, "The Pope delivered his tough message in the Vatican's Clementine Hall. Pope Francis has sharply criticized the Vatican bureaucracy in a pre-Christmas address to cardinals, complaining of, quote, spiritual Alzheimer's and, quote, the terrorism of gossip. He said the Curia, the administrative pinnacle of the Roman Catholic Church, was suffering from 15 ailments, which he wanted cured in the new year, the new Roman year. You know, friends, most of you who watch this program, or many of you who watch this program anyway, you know that the real new year begins in the spring when God's calendar moves into a new year. But the calendar of the Roman government, of which the Catholic Church has long been a part of, it's in kind of a limbo status with the Roman government now, since the sixth head of the Holy Roman Empire went back into the pit in 1945. But it had a long activity for 1,260 years, from 554 A.D. to 1814 A.D., until Napoleon lost the Battle of Waterloo and the Roman Empire was dissolved. The Roman Catholic Church had a big part. It held the coronation ceremonies in which it crowned all of the empires. And you would count it as crowning Napoleon, even though he impatiently grabbed the crown out of the Pope's hands and crowned himself. But the Pope was going to do it if Napoleon had just had a little more patience. But we will see the Pope, whether this one or another one. We don't know yet. We don't know exactly when, but we know the stage is certainly becoming well set and could spring together so quickly it could be, as Mr. Herbert Armstrong has often said, like a rat getting caught in a rat trap. And I've got a broadcast that I just put the scrolling text on the screen with Mr. Armstrong speaking that I'll probably play this weekend. I may even take some excerpts from it and play it this week, because he has a lot of statements in there related to current news and things we should be watching, and statements about the Catholic Church and about the coming seventh and final head of the Holy Roman Empire, which, as I said, either this Pope or another will, in the near future, be crowning in Frankfurt, Germany, in the Emperor's Hall. But to finish up tonight's news with this story, friends, Pope Francis, the first Latin American pontiff, and by the way, pontiff is an alternate term for when you're talking about the Pope, but it's not exclusive. Pontiff is not exclusive to the Pope. Pontiff, when you look up all the definitions, you see it really only means bishop, and many bishops in the Roman Catholic Church are called pontiffs. There's the Roman pontiff, the pontiff of Rome. There's the you just name an area, and you got the pontiff here and the pontiff there. It just means bishop. And of course, when it's used as a substitute for saying the Pope, it just means the archbishop of the Roman Catholic Church. The Pope, or Papa, is the chief head pontiff, so to speak. But there are other pontiffs. But and that's why. All right, and so this news story, when it says American pontiff, that means bishops in America, also criticized those bishops of the Roman Catholic Church. Also criticized, quote, those who look obsessively at their own image. He has a little humor in that. I hope you get it. I'm not going to explain it right now. He has demanded reform. Ken, I'm not going to explain that. He has demanded reform of the Curia. There was silence at the end of the Pope's speech. Addressing the Curia earlier today, Pope Francis said some power-hungry clerics were guilty of, quote, cold-bloodedly killing the reputation of their own colleagues and brothers. Yeah, it makes me wonder, friends, if some of the things he said, we shouldn't take a look at them ourselves in our own various lives and organizations and so on. The caption with this photograph that's part of this story, friends, reads, "The Pope says the church elite must reach out to poor and vulnerable worshipers." The Pope also compared the performance of the church's civil servants to that of an orchestra playing out of tune because they fail to collaborate and have no team spirit. And friends, I have an analysis of this news story by BBC's David Wiley in Rome. He says, clearly, Pope Francis is meeting opposition among the nearly 3,000-strong staff of the Italian-dominated Curia. He had never worked in Rome before his election as Pope last year, and as a Vatican outsider from the other end of the world, is clearly frustrated by the slow-moving and creaking Vatican bureaucracy. He is trying to reform it with the help of a new group of cardinal advisors he has called in from every continent to draw up a new Vatican constitution. And that's the end of that analysis by Mr. Wiley. More from this news story, friends. Before Pope Francis' election in March 2013, the High Pontiff encountered internal opposition to some of the reforms he wants to carry out. He has set up a series of specialist bodies to fight corruption and poor management, appointing a team of advisors. The Pope also launched a cleanup of the Vatican Bank, officially known as the Institute for the Works of Religion, IOR. The IOR has long had a poor reputation after a succession of scandals. Now, friends, here's some of Curia's 15 ailments. It's spiritual Alzheimer's, feeling immortal or immune, suffering from existential schizophrenia, committing terrorism of gossip, becoming spiritually and mentally hardened. And again, friends, some of those, some of us individually and people in other organizations of churches who try to carry on living God's commands may want to look at themselves and their organizations with some of these ailments that the Pope is lampooning the Vatican bureaucracy with. Pope Francis has also suggested that the Curia's power, concentrated in Rome for centuries, could be diluted to some extent by giving Catholic bishops around the world a bigger say in church doctrine. The pontiff himself did not work in the Curia before he was elected. All right, that's been pointed out both in the analysis and in this part of tonight's ending story. For this Monday night, friends, God willing, and the creek don't rise, thanks for joining me. We'll be back again tomorrow night, Tuesday night, with the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast as we pull together some new equipment, still waiting on some new pieces for it, getting our backup equipment to run more like the main equipment runs. Taking a lot of work, but we're getting there, little by little. Don't have all my slides yet, so I'm not able to use our little horses during the program, but we'll get it there. We'll get back to where we were and be able to put our charts up on the screen and all as we used to. Again, friends, thank you for joining me. Until next time, this is your host for Nightcast, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying so long and good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.